Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this 2024 symposium, Trans Allyship Learn, Grow, Act. This is a joint effort by OCIDE, PFLAG San Gabriel Valley API, and JCL, with the financial support from the PRISM Foundation. My name is David Inoue. I use he, him pronouns. I currently serve as the executive director for the Japanese American Citizens League in Washington, D.C. Just to give a little bit of context for why we're doing this, unfortunately, we find ourselves in an incredibly divisible time. In just the past few weeks, we've seen attacks on the Haitian community in Springfield, Ohio, and renewed attacks on Chinese immigrants, Chinese scientists, and academicians. What's common to these attacks are the efforts to disenfranchise and alienate specific communities through the spreading of misinformation and disinformation, basically lies about who these communities are. This is not dissimilar to what Japanese Americans, Asian Americans, Chinese Americans have faced throughout our history. And now, today, when we think of the trans community, it is no different. In 2023 alone, there were over 500 bills across this country targeting trans and LGBTQ individuals. Even when legislation might not be involved, we hear the rhetoric, talk about school bathrooms, sports participation, and attacks on diversity initiatives in schools and workplaces. For those of us who are not members of the trans community, we hear these misrepresentations and internalize them, and unfortunately start to build our own prejudices and stereotypes based on these lies. So I, for one, look forward to this afternoon's programming so that I can become more aware of what faces the trans community and be able to better counter and respond to the lies that are out there. As voters in general, I hope that we can all become more informed to make better choices in our voting and in promoting public policies that are more inclusive, rather than those 500 bills that seek to exclude. At JCL's 2023 National Convention, we actually passed a resolution requiring us as an organization to ensure that we are more inclusive of transgender and non-binary people in all of our activities and events. And this further inspired several of our organizations, particularly at the community level, the grassroots level, to see what could be done to further that discussion. And that is why we are having this today. Through this, we hope that we will help you all become more informed and make better civic and voting choices in support of the trans and LGBT community. To open the symposium, we want to start by providing some common language and understandings of the trans community. I would like to welcome Kai Mita, who serves on OCIDE's steering committee, to lead us through this and establish a foundation for the rest of the day's discussion. Thank you all for joining us and taking the time from your busy schedules to become better informed and better allies. I look forward to joining you for the rest of this afternoon. Kai, I'll hand it off to you.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. My name is Kai Mita, and I identify as a trans man, someone who's transitioned from female to male. My pronouns are he, him, and I was recently an intern for Okairi. And today I want to talk to you about a topic that is very important in our society and to me, which is understanding gender identity and expression. Transgender is used to describe people whose gender identity is different from the gender they were assigned at birth. You'll often hear the term trans as shorthand for transgender. To treat a trans person with respect, it is crucial to address them according to their gender identity, not their sex at birth. For example, someone who lives as a woman today is called a transgender woman and should be referred to as she and her. Similarly, a transgender man lives as a man today and should be referred to as he, him. Some transgender people identify as neither a man nor a woman or as a combination of male and female. They might use terms like non-binary or queer to describe their gender identity. Those who are non-binary often referred to as they, them. Now I would like to show this visual representation of the gender unicorn. Thanks for showing that. I would like to clarify a few key terms that will help us better understand the conversation. Gender identity is your internal knowledge of your gender. For example, knowing that you are a man, a woman, or another gender. Gender expression is how you present your gender to the outside world. This includes your behavior, clothing, hairstyle, voice, and body characteristics. The unicorn's dotted lines represent gender expression, illustrating how it could range from feminine, masculine, or even androgynous. Sex assigned at birth is the label you were given when you were born, typically male or female, based on physical characteristics. However, this doesn't define who you are or what your gender identity might turn out to be. Everyone has a gender identity, including cisgender or non-transgender people. If someone's gender identity matches the gender they were assigned at birth, they are cisgender or cis for short. When someone begins to live according to their gender identity rather than the gender they were assigned at birth, this period is called gender transition. This can involve a lot of reflection and can be a challenging time as many trans people risk social stigma, discrimination, and harassment. However, being open about one's gender identity can be life affirming and even life saving. Steps in a gender transition might include changing one's clothing, appearance, name, or the pronoun people use to refer to them, such as she, he, or they. Some people might also change their identification documents, like their driver's license or passport, to better reflect their gender. Additionally, some individuals may undergo hormone replacement therapy, which is HRT, or other medical procedures to change their physical characteristics to align with their gender identity. It's important to note that all trans people deserve the same dignity and respect, regardless of whether they have taken any legal or medical steps. For example, in my own journey, I have been fortunate to transition with the capability of having HRT and gender affirming surgeries. While these milestones are significant, but as I'm sure many trans people can say, this is a long, challenging road and often involves multiple steps just to fully embrace the person they truly are. Using respectful terminology is crucial. Treat trans people as you would treat any other person. This includes using the name that they have asked you to call them and the pronouns they prefer. If you aren't sure what pronouns someone uses, just ask politely. It's important to remember that they may also change their preference over time. When in doubt, it's always safe to use their name instead of pronouns. Sometimes people make mistakes and forget, but if it's not done with malicious intent and they make an effort to correct themselves, then it's okay. The beginning of my transition was difficult because I changed everything at the same time: my name, pronouns, gender change, and physical characteristics. Over this initial time, I wanted to quit because I was so depressed with how my body was changing during this second puberty. I mean, no one wants to go through acne and voice cracks as an adult. My workplace at that time was not receptive to this and was instead transphobic. I did not feel psychologically safe with how they disrespected and singled me out for my identity. Despite reporting these incidents, no actions were taken, and I had to go into work every day knowing what was waiting for me. This harassment was extremely tough on top of transitioning. Fortunately, I overcame this obstacle and found a better job, and later went on to finish my bachelor's degree without relying on a toxic workplace to fund my education. Additionally, please be respectful when discussing topics related to their bodies. If you don't understand gender affirming surgeries, it's best to do your own research, as most people may not feel comfortable talking about it. Understanding and respecting gender identity and expression is vital for creating an inclusive and supportive community for everyone. I recognize that I have privileges that others may not due to my gender and living in California. However, across the country, rights are being stripped away from not only trans individuals, but also other marginalized communities. Recognizing and respecting gender identity and expression is essential to building an inclusive and supportive community for all. As a trans man, having a space like Okaidi makes me feel truly seen. I wouldn't be where I am without the support from my family and friends. I have zero regrets on my decision and can finally live authentically as a proud Japanese American man. Thank you for your attention and commitment to treating all people with the respect they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kai, for that informative Trans 101 presentation and really sharing your story in such a heartfelt way. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marsha Izumi, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Besides being the proud mother of a transgender son, I am also part of OCIDE, PFLAG San Gabriel Valley API, and JCL's San Fernando Valley chapter. So I feel so grateful that these three organizations that mean so much to me have come together to organize this symposium. But right now, it is truly my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Debbie Jackson. I met Debbie many years ago, and I was so moved by her courage and her deep love for her child, Avery. Her family has faced many challenges living in Missouri, and through it all, they have stood by Avery and been an unwavering beacon of light and hope, not only just for their child, but for families of transgender children just like mine. May your story today open your heart even further and inspire you to be even greater allies for the trans community. So please welcome Debbie Jackson, wife, mother, advocate, speaker, and an amazing, unstoppable force of love. Debbie?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Marsha. My name is Debbie Jackson. My pronouns are she, her. And before we just get started, I want to say welcome to everyone. I appreciate you all taking time out of your personal time, usually family time on the weekend, to be here today, to learn more about the trans community, to show your love for the trans community, to improve your allyship for the trans community. As a parent who is trans adjacent, I never quite know if I consider myself in the community, part of the community, with the community, holding the community. But I think in advocacy, all of us who are here for the right reasons make up our own community. So I welcome you to that part of it. For the trans folks who are here listening, I do want to warn, when I tell my personal story to everyone here, sometimes some of the things that I can say can be a little painful and cause you to relive some potential negative things that happen. I want you to know in advance that that might happen, and I apologize for it. But sharing some of the more painful parts of my family's story is one of the ways that we nurture the compassion and empathy from others. So my apologies. I'm here for you and hope that everything will be well in the end. If anyone needs to take time away, please do. If you have questions along the way, please drop them in. I will try to do my best and watch as we go along. Now, with that said, I have about 35 minutes with you today, and 35 minutes of me just reading a prepared speech to you I thought would be kind of boring. So I'm going to sit here and authentically just tell my story. Hopefully I will answer questions that you have along the way. If you don't, please, or if you think of something that isn't answered, feel free to drop it in, because we will have Q&A at the end. So with that, I am not who most people would have thought of as an advocate for trans youth. Sometimes I tell my story and hold this little piece of information in suspense, but today I'm just going to jump right out there and say it. I grew up in the Deep South in a military family, in a conservative family, very Republican, Southern Baptist, went to church multi times a week. In high school in Alabama, I was my high school chaplain. I led a prayer and a devotional over the intercom every single day. Like, this is how deeply rooted my conservative and religious credentials could be. So when I had my children, we had what we assumed were two boys, because the doctors looked down at birth and noticed the parts that they had between their legs and decided that both of them were boys. Because really, in our world, in our society right now, we make a lot of rules about boys and girls and behavior and what's acceptable or not acceptable. And the very first one comes down to body parts, only external body parts. The doctors never do full exams. They're never checking the full biology of a child or anything, but they make or break a child's future based on that moment of birth and what they see. And as I sit here and talk to you today, and as you attend other sessions today, I want you to think about all the ways that society imposes rules on what it means to be a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, simply by those assertions. Now, I'm telling you that I had what we thought were two boys, two assigned male at birth children. But as I go through in my story, I'm going to use they, them for my second born, Avery, because Avery identifies as non-binary now. During this story, you hear that they identify differently at different points in time. But as Kai mentioned in the introduction, going forward, sometimes people's names and pronouns change as they go and as they grow as a person. So I had what we thought were two boys just based on that. And I grew up as a tomboy. I really wasn't very feminine, wasn't very girly. I never thought I really fit the mold as what it means to be a girl or a woman. So I was actually pretty happy and relieved that I was going to have these two boys that I could grow up with. Rough and tumble, we'll get dirty, we'll do things with sports, because I was playing into all of the stereotypes that we have about what it is to be men or women in our society too. But after a couple of years, one of my children, my younger one, started to do what we would consider gender nonconforming behavior. And really, I don't like that term, because what does it mean? It just means that the person is breaking some of those societal rules that we have. But those rules have changed over time. They've changed in different cultures. They've changed over generations. They've changed with marketing and the way that we market toys and clothes to children. You can see that just in the last 20 or 30 years. So I had one child that I thought was gender nonconforming. Around the age of 2, Avery started to want to play dress up in girl dress up dresses, princess dresses at daycare, and started to take on a little bit more of what we would think of as a girl persona by saying that the screen is green. Uh-oh. Hopefully everything's okay. I'm just going to keep talking while Kat deals with that. So we had a child who was playing dress up, who was taking on this persona of all of the girls that they saw in cartoons and in movies and TV shows. And during this time, my husband and I thought, oh, maybe this is a sign that we have a gay boy. Because even though we grew up in conservative areas, we did know and have gay friends. We thought this is the time we're going to understand that we're bringing up a gay child. We're going to make sure that they have no preconceived notions about who they are, and if they ever have to come out to us and tell us about a boyfriend or something like that. So we thought we were being progressive for being conservative parents. But over the course of about a year, Avery's dress up time became a little bit more intense, while at the same time, their behavior at home became quite distressing. So we had a kid who was wanting to play dress up more and more, was wanting to have dress up clothes at home, was wanting to have little accessories like headbands and shoes and other things that presented as feminine, because gender presentation, again, not gender, we're thinking presentation is just a little feminine. But at the same time, age 3, early age 4, there was a darkness that started to set in, and Avery's behavior shifted, starting with acting out at preschool, showing anger and hostility, not wanting to go to preschool, fighting us left and right. And then it really took a dark turn, and Avery started talking about death and dying, and was asking, if I crawled on the roof, climbed the tree, crawled on the roof, something, if I fell off, would I just break a leg, or would I die? If we're driving down the street and I fell out of the car, would anything happen to me? Would I just get hurt, or would I die? So all of these things together were kind of distressing, but we thought, hey, as long as we're encouraging and we're supportive, and our child can express their gender or what we thought was sexual orientation at a young age, however they see fit, we can head some of this off. But at the age of 4, we're moving into Christmas, and Avery circles all of the toys, as kids are prone to do or known to do, in a toy catalog. And in this toy catalog, it says things like, the girls section, the boys section, and Avery's circling everything that is related to girls. But they're saying, I don't know if I should do this because Santa might come and skip our house because I'm a weird kid. I'm the bad kid for wanting these things. And my brother might not get anything. And then that makes me even a worse kid. So I'm not sure if that I should do this. And we're like, no, it's okay. Toys can be for boys or girls. Toys are here to make you happy. Don't worry about any of that. But then a couple of weeks after that, we were out in a store doing some shopping, and Avery kind of tugged on my hand and said, Mom, you think that I'm a boy, but I'm a girl on the inside. Don't you know? I'm a girl. So suddenly my world shifted. I was not sure what to think, and thought, oh my gosh, this is more than a gay child. I don't really know what this means. We're going to have to go consult someone. I called my husband, told my husband. We took Avery to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, yeah, this is more than I'm aware of as what play would be and imagination. So why don't you go see a gender psychologist, or a psychologist, children's psychologist. And then the child psychologist said, ooh, this is out of my realm of understanding, but there's this gender therapist, go see a gender therapist. So we went there, and the therapist said, yeah, I have a lot of adult trans patients, and they say they knew at the age of 4. And they said they were depressed, and they said they knew something was different about them, and they had a lot of these conflicting emotions. So why don't we follow your child's lead, and we'll see what happens. So that's what we did. We trusted the doctors, and we changed pronouns. We changed the way that we referred to our kids. Instead of 2 boys or 2 sons, we had a son and a daughter, and Avery became she, her. And like that, everything shifted. All of a sudden, was happy to get up every day. One day they were going to go to a birthday party, and we had changed everything at home, but we hadn't changed it in public yet. So this birthday party was on the weekend, and we're like, hey, get dressed, put your boy clothes back on, and we'll go to the party. Because honestly, as parents, we were still scared. We were afraid of being judged. We thought other people would think we were crazy or worse. So we were doing one thing at home and another thing in public. And that day, Avery put their foot down and said, no, I don't want to go if I have to dress like a boy, because I'm not a boy, and I've already told you this, and I'm not going to go anymore. So we're like, well, let's see what happens. Let Avery go, dressed head to toe in pink, got to the party. All of the parents were like, hey, you're late. You're going to miss cake. Go have fun for a little while, and glad you're here. And it was no big deal. And we thought, wow, what were we worried about? This is going to be so easy. So the next day we went and got everyone up for school. And Avery put on that same outfit and said, okay, Mom, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's go. I don't want to be late for school because I get to be me now. Panic, breathe, it's okay. Headed to school, didn't want to be late. And the teacher said, we'll work this in. We've had a parent who transitioned a long time ago, so we've got this. We're going to be okay. And Avery had an amazing week at preschool that week. And then the weekend came, and the kids got to talk to their parents 48 hours, came back to school the next Monday, and the kids were like, Avery, you're a weirdo. You're kind of a freak. My mom said, hopefully soon you'll start acting like a boy again, because this is just weird. And why are you acting like this? Talk about crestfallen. All the hopes, all the dreams, could see their future, could see their potential right in front of them, and it was taken away. And all of this is at 4. This is so much for a 4-year-old to have to go through. So we made it through the week. I decided that if my child was going to be that distressed, if this community wasn't going to understand, I would take our kid out of school. We needed to figure out something going forward for the future. And I wanted to do it in the safest area possible. So I gave everyone a note and in their little mailboxes and said, we're going to be leaving at the end of the week. I know you've seen some changes with Avery, and I know it's confusing to you, but put yourself in our shoes. We've gone through a lot more of this. However, here are these great resources. And we shared websites and said, please go learn about this. Here's our contact information. We hope that we can still be friends. It's their child's entire world. The end of the week came. We go to pick up all of our things and walk out at the end of the day, and every single family turned and looked away with this. Suddenly had to tie a shoe, look at something up on a board, go to the next room and talk to another teacher. And we walked out of there like the walk of shame. It was horrible. And that's a moment that Avery, 13 years now later, still remembers and still carries with them. Well, the next few months, we just kind of stayed secluded in our home. It was the four of us against the world. Avery's growing hair out. We're changing all of the clothes and looking for resources, because now I don't know where to send my kids to school. This was a long time ago, and public schools were not accepting in trans kids. Public schools, at least in Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, did not have policies ready to take a trans kid in with them. So we knew we were going to end up homeschooling for a while until we figured things out. So I left my job. We had our kids at home, and it was just the four of us. And Avery really started to blossom. Every time we went out in public, they felt a little more constant. And I was in that like mom mode, intense, looking for anyone to make a face at my kid or to say something rude about my kid. I'm just ready to fight the fight that I needed to. And eventually we found a homeschool community. We moved into that community. It was not a religious homeschooling community, because there are those. We made that mistake, quickly learned. We found a secular homeschool community and joined, and there were kids with so many differences, and there were biracial families, and there were families of every conceivable religion, and families from different countries, and families who had just moved and were learning English. And it was such a beautiful environment with neurodiversity and skin diversity and personal belief diversity. And we felt like we found our people, and everything was going well, and life was going to go great going forward. And it did for a couple of years. And we were considered such a success story that I was offered a chance to tell our story in a newspaper article, and then that turned into a speech. And from there, the world got to know me. And I think right after that is when I was able to meet Marsha. And shortly after that, go to my first PFLAG meeting. And at my first PFLAG meeting, they were like, oh my gosh, we need a new president and someone to talk about trans things. So, hey, voting is next month. Why don't you be our president? So I became PFLAG president in Kansas City for a couple of months. So hey, to all the PFLAGers out there, I love you. So things seemed to be going really well. We were on track. We were making a difference. We had not met another family with a trans kid at that point, a couple of years in, but we were starting to find community and build community. And we thought, the world is our oyster and everything's going to grow great. And then we had a bill introduced in Missouri that was going to allow religious excuses. They call them exclusions. I call them excuses, to discriminate against LGBT people. So we decided we better go and testify against this bill. We can't let people use religion, my faith. We can't people take my God and say that they can hurt my child because of that. So we went to testify against this religious exclusion bill, and it didn't go anywhere. But then suddenly the next year there was a bathroom bill, HB2, in another part of the country. And we thought, oh, that's kind of scary. What if that happens here? But that bathroom bill, it passed, but it didn't really go anywhere. And people were upset about it. Like, we don't watch where anyone goes to the bathroom. We just all go into stalls and we pee and we wash our hands. We hope everyone else washes their hands and we go. So why are we doing this? So that kind of fell apart. But then the next year, they came out with some more, and they started the bathroom bills in other states. And then parents like me went to testify. Trans adults went to testify, and we went, and our kids were there, and they looked young and innocent. And if you don't know the geography of of the Midwest, Kansas City, Missouri is on the state line. I lived a couple of streets off the state line in Missouri. My child was born in Kansas. So we had a Kansas birth certificate that we're not able to update with the gender marker. We have Missouri, who started religious exclusion laws. And then all of a sudden, we had 2 years of bathroom bills where they wanted to ban trans people from bathrooms in both states. So here we go, driving to Topeka, Kansas, to the Capitol, and we protest and we wave our flags and we go to rallies and we testify and we meet with legislators. And then the next day we drive across to the state of Missouri and we do the same thing over there. And those bills didn't go anywhere. They kind of died because people thought, oh, that's kind of bad. We don't want to do this. But parents were such a force that I firmly believe that's why the next year, Missouri came out with its first bill that was going to criminalize parents like me who had affirmed our children, charge us with a Class B felony child abuse, and threaten us with going to prison for 8 to 10 years for supporting our child. So back we went to the Capitol. There's no way you can step in. You can't get on, tell me how to parent my kid. You don't live in my home. You don't know what I'm going through. And we were able to defeat those bills. But that bill was just one of the beginning, because then the next year they started doing that in a couple of other states. And the way that legislation works is they're never quite sure how it's going to go that first year. So they test it out somewhere. And then, because this isn't organic, there are groups with a lot of money behind all of this. They take that same language and they put it in another bill in different states. It's just copied and pasted, but some of the details are different. So the next year, they tried it in another state where they weren't going to criminalize the parents, they were going to criminalize the doctors, and the doctors were going to get life in prison just for affirming a trans kid and providing something like puberty blockers, encouraging a parent to let their child socially transition. And then the state next door, they had the same bill, the same language, except the penalty there was that the doctor would get 10 years in prison and lose their medical license. And then in another state, it was that the parents and the provider could be charged with child abuse, but not necessarily long prison sentences and that kind of thing. So they test it out, and each year they see how far is the public willing to go in supporting the bills. And they find that little place where it's the sweet spot. Like, yeah, we're going to get them, but ooh, that's maybe going a little bit too far. I don't know if I agree with that. And then that's the one that they really start pushing out everywhere. And that's what we've been dealing with for the last several years, that kind of legislation. So through all of this, we've become really visible. I gave my speech. That speech went viral. I was invited to start speaking places and was able to join our PFLAG group the following year, because we had kept Avery pretty anonymous through all this. We said AJ instead of Avery Jackson. It was just AJ. We didn't show any photos. And about a year into it, Avery said, you've been out there talking about our family and telling our story, but you don't show my face, and it looks like I'm ashamed of who I am, and I'm not ashamed of who I am, and I don't want people to think that, so I want you to show my face. So we made the decision as a family to let Avery be known as Avery and show their face on some social media. And then from there, they wanted to tell their own story in a video, and then that one went viral. And the LGBT community was just embracing us. This conservative family, and this family with this amazing young kid who's getting involved in advocacy. And then National Geographic magazine came along, and they wanted to do the gender revolution. And they photographed Avery for a story about 9-year-olds. And Avery ended up on their cover because they were so impressed with what they said, talking about gender and not being a boy. That put so much scrutiny on us and so much public attention on us that suddenly the hate came from everywhere. Trolls came from everywhere. They were looking up our home address, our phone numbers, posting it online on all of these horrible anti-trans message boards and everything. And we felt so violated. And all of this was happening right at the election when we thought we were going to move from President Obama and all of the positive things that they had done for the trans community, saying transgender for the first time in his speech, putting out guidance about how to support trans kids in school with Title IX. Like, we were ready for the future. that magazine came out, more eyes are on us, and then the wrong person won the election, if you want to say they won, electoral college and all that. So the next 4 years were pretty awful, and all of these bills came left, right, left, right. And at the same time, everything in our personal world was really starting to fall apart, because remember, my family, conservatives, Alabama, Southern Baptists, they were not happy. They were not happy with our advocacy. They were not happy with the exposure from National Geographic. And my mother sent me this really, really painful message that said, we will never support this. We think that this is child abuse. We think this is because you have fallen away from God. And if you move forward with this, we can't support you and have you in our family. This is just humiliating. We don't know how to talk about this. It's humiliating. And my mother ended that message with these words: the way that I deal with Avery is to pray for him. I've spent a lot of time on my knees praying for him to become the boy that God created him to be. And my hope that is he will decide for himself he's a boy when he is finally away from you. So this is talking about my then 9-year-old child, hoping that they will get away from me to be able to have a future, because I am such an awful parent, that I have done something to cause this, to encourage this, that I have steered my child away to be doomed forever, and God's going to reject them because they have rejected God. And all of this is happening at the same time that I just want my kid to be able to go into the bathroom without being afraid. And they were afraid to go into the bathroom because people in our life knew who we were before this social transition began. We lived in the same town. I understand why in the past people would pack up and move and start over, because we lived in the same neighborhood. We saw those people out and about. And there was always that fear around bathrooms. What if we're out at a restaurant or a store and Avery goes to the bathroom and someone could say, that's a boy, that's one of those predators, that's one of those sick people, and what that would do. And Avery was afraid of that and would ask me to stand in the public restroom outside the stall on guard. And that was just with those bathroom bills. And then they had the ones that were parental abuse and doctor abuse and everything else. And you can see trauma is starting early. Like, these things are causing trauma. So over the next few years, what did that look like? In 2018, we had fewer than 40 anti-LGBTQ bills in the United States as a whole. 50 states, fewer than 40 bills. 3 years later, 2021, 252 anti-LGBTQ bills were introduced in 41 states. And if you think blue states and red states, you count, there are more than 9 of the blue ones. So even in what are considered safe states, these bills are introduced, and kids in these states see it. People see their legislators talking about them this way. And out of those 252 bills, 147 directly targeted the trans community, and 13 that were directed at trans kids were passed. In 2022, 1 year later, it moved up from 252 to more than 300 of those bills. And of those 300, the percentage shifted as well. 189 were specifically anti-LGBTQ, 100 targeted trans kids for harm. They were gender-affirming care bans, so affecting a healthcare. There were 45 that were trying to ban kids from participating in sports, and 76 that wanted to erase the LGBTQ presence in schools. 2023, last year, more than 500 anti-LGBTQ bills were introduced in 43 of the 50 states in the US. 75 of those bills were passed and enacted into law, and 13 of them directed at trans youth were passed. And just in the first part of this year, the last time that I updated slides to go speak to some schools, more than 300 had been introduced in the first month of 2024 alone. And then I just stopped counting. I let other orgs go and count. And there are other sessions on this today. I hope you'll go to those that will talk about that in more detail. But in 1 month, more than 300 of these bills were introduced. Half of them were restricting students and educators. And that was by the bathroom policies in schools, in public schools, banning trans kids from sports, but the censorship of books and school curricula so that you can't say gender, you can't talk about a non-binary person, you can't talk about someone who has two moms or two dads in their family. They wanted to take LGBTQ people out of school because they consider it obscene and dangerous. And then some of the most egregious ones are the forced outing of trans kids. If a kid goes to their teacher and says, I don't feel comfortable with this, could you call me this other name? No, I must go and report you now to your parents who might not be safe. Otherwise, you would be talking to them about this. But I'm going to tell your parents you've been asking about this. So good luck at home. That's what forced outing is. And I find it ironic. I came from Alabama. Do you know how many kids in my school were named Bubba? Oh, except they weren't named Bubba. That's just what we called them. They were called Bubba during the graduation ceremonies. And it wasn't until 25 years later through Facebook that I found out their names are things like Kenneth. We've been calling people different names forever, but suddenly trans people do not get to have their names respected. We can't call them something that makes them feel safe. So many of these have passed. The entire look of the map has changed from those first couple of years when they were kind of spotlighting. I invite you to just Google LGBTQ maps or equality maps, and there are many versions that you can see that paint the picture for you about how drastic things have become for trans kids, especially across the country in the last few years. But the legislation that promised it was just there to protect kids has been shifting, and they've been moving the goalposts. So at first it was no one transitioning before puberty, and then it was with puberty blockers, and then it's anything under the age of 18. And then some of these states have decided that they wanted to say that under 21 or under 25, you really don't know who you are yet. You can join the military, you can go to war, you can vote, you can drive, you can spend $100,000 on a college education and get deep into debt, but you don't know who you are and if changing your name is the correct thing to do for you. That's really how much they're policing trans people. And the vast majority of this legislation actually doesn't use the word transgender at all, because they don't even want to acknowledge who people are. They can't just say the words. Instead, they have to say things like biological sex and go back to defining male, female, man, woman by reproductive body parts. But we've also noticed that they're trying to police reproduction as well right now. And if you look at a map of anti-trans bills and where they've been introduced and passed, and you look at a map of abortion bans, they overlap almost perfectly, maybe a little bit off to the side, one or two states, but they pretty much are lining up because it's people who are trying to control other people. And what does that mean for folks? The Trevor Project is an amazing organization who's out there who studies, surveys trans youth, LGBTQ youth, but they also get a lot of distress calls and texts into their hotlines. And they found that 85% of trans and non-binary youth say that debates about state laws restricting them and their rights have negatively impacted their mental health. 85%. We've called them hope-stealing bills because they steal the hope from kids. Reactions like anger, sadness, being stressed, scared, and feeling hopeless and helpless were some of the words that these kids have used. We ended up leaving Missouri after the last legislative year. Avery had decided after a few years of trying to stay under the radar a little bit because of all that hate we had received, because of the backlash, because of people stalking our family and in real time scaring them. They wanted to go quiet for a little bit, but so many of these bills had come to light again that Avery said, I wanted to do my part. And they went to testify one day in the state of Missouri to talk about sports. And they were testifying, I've always wanted to play volleyball and I would love to play volleyball, but they don't have boys volleyball. They have girls volleyball. And I'd like to go to public school after being homeschooled just so I could play volleyball and be part of a team and get that experience. And the senator interrupted them and said, whoa, 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 whoa. Have you had, like, what parts do you have? You had surgeries? Because I don't know that I would feel comfortable being in a bathroom with you. In the middle of a room with 200 strangers, this senator from a position of power up on a dais says to my then 14-year-old child, what genitals do you have? I couldn't believe that this was happening. This is what these kinds of bills have done. They have allowed people to think you can dehumanize a trans person to the point that it's okay to question someone publicly, not just privately. You know, I'm curious. I want to question you publicly in a room full of strangers. Avery was amazing in reacting, saying that doesn't have anything to do with this, and that's really inappropriate. And we went back to sit down. And Avery had a panic attack, full-on panic attack, shaking, red, tears, sweating. So many kids that the session ended right after that. One more person testified, and then they closed the hearing. And we were able to go to a LGBTQ senator's office, and it was like triaging all of these kids. They were all having a trauma response. It was painful to see because they had to sit and witness this. And these were kids who were so brave to be there and speak for themselves, and they came away traumatized. We went away from that. Avery still didn't want to move. They wanted to get through. The next year my husband and I started going back and forth, both states again. We had more bills to fight off. And every single day when we would leave to drive off to the hearing, we would arrive 2-3 hour drive later, and I'd get a text, and Avery's like, oh, Mom, I don't feel really good today. I think I have the flu again. My stomach hurts. I'm vomiting. And I was like, okay, take some rest. We'll come back and take care of you. We'd get back from the hearing. Avery's questions, how did it go? What happened today? I'm like, nothing passed today. It's okay. Nothing passed. You're all right. And the next day they would feel well again. Oh, maybe I didn't have the flu. I'm okay. This was trauma in real time. Avery didn't recognize it, but we did. So at the end of that legislative session, they passed a bill banning healthcare for trans kids, which my kid had needed. They've always needed it. They said they needed it. They knew that they needed this care. And they said, why are we still here? I can't do this another year. So we left. We sold absolutely everything that we owned. Going from the middle of the country, going from somewhere in the South, cost of living is a lot less than some of the places that are safer. But this is what my family and a lot of other families around the country have had to do. Pack up and sell, give everything away, because our kids just need a chance. They just need hope again. They need hope. And I do want to leave things on a positive note. I don't like to get to the end of time and then have something like that and leave the heaviness over you. So I want to give you some hope. We have now been in our new home for exactly 1 year and 1 week today. 3 months ago, Avery was able to break up with their therapist. Avery's been seeing a therapist for about 4 years, every 2 to 3 weeks, not because they don't know who they are, but because of the trauma of the legislative sessions. And as of about 2.5, 3 months ago, Avery said, I don't know what to talk about anymore. Like, I feel really good. I feel at peace. I feel safe. No one's questioning who I am. I don't have to wake up every day and wonder what's happening. And that is what every trans person deserves. That's what every trans youth deserves. So that's why we're all here. And I just want to wrap it up by throwing out a little bit more love and positivity. I want to thank you for letting me come in today and speak to you and open up this amazing session you're going to have today. It's been an honor to be with you here. The last few years have tested us in some really difficult ways. I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg here about what it's emotionally felt like. The rhetoric that's been trying to undermine the trans community's existence has been relentless, but the trans community is resilient and strong and vibrant, stronger, more united, more determined than ever. And I want you to think about this. To live authentically in a world that tells you not to and literally tries to make it impossible for you to is a radical act of self-love and defiance. And every trans person who's here and every trans person you hear and meet outside of this space going forward embodies a spirit that is nothing short of extraordinary. And it can be overwhelming to feel the weight of what's in front of us. But in these moments, that's when we are the chance to be the strongest. Voices are being heard, stories are being told, you're hearing stories, you're meeting this, you can take this away with you and say, I know trans people now. Trans people's presence is being felt in a way that cannot be ignored. And it's through this advocacy, through this visibility, and through the collective efforts that we're going to push forward and create the world that everyone deserves, where all people, regardless of their gender identity, are celebrated and valued for who they really are. And the power is in community. This community here, communities of trans folks, of family, of allies, this is what's going to help us win. We lift each other up, we support each other. When one person is exhausted, the other person can take up the light, and we just keep moving forward together, together, together. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being curious. Thank you for being open. To all the trans folks who are here, thank you for your bravery and your dedication to get through all of this and to teach and to share. I have no doubt that what you're building here is something beautiful, just the way we are all building something beautiful together. There's incredible power that resides within each and every one of you, and together we can make a lasting change. Thank you.